Hi there! Welcome to On the Flip Side, a podcast for anyone who wants to live their best sales life. We're going to be talking to buyers, sales managers, SDRs, and A's about things like what does it take to be a great sales manager? Or how can you go home happy month after month? So let's dive right in.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of On the Flip Side. For today's episode, I have a very special guest with me, Paula. Paula is a great leader and coach and is working on a book launch for later this year as well. She's very passionate about leadership and what she likes to call Side B, the silent track of leadership. I'm really curious to hear more about it. But before we get into it, Paula, can you tell us what was the first thing you ever sold?
Well, if you want to really go that deep, but the first thing I ever sold was I sold my dad on getting me a purple bicycle. And it took me a while to really put that into perspective and to tell him about the features and benefits and consult him that he wouldn't have to drive me around. But as I got into my professional career, I sold travel. So that's where I really learned the probing questions, making sure that I was getting a client to the right destination. And if they were ocean people, I didn't put them in Colorado to ski.
Interesting. As the mother of a 5-year-old whose favorite color is purple, that definitely rings a bell. And, maybe what it makes me think is I should just play hardball. Maybe that'll be the start of a sales career for my 5-year-old boy.
It is. I've been in sales since the day I was born, I believe, from my dad. So always start young.
Nice. So yeah, I think just to set context, it'll be great to hear a little bit about, what you've been up to in your professional life and what you do today.
Sure. So, I'm coming off of 30 years in corporate business, and I ran an inside sales department, and inside sales has been a passion of mine. We grew the department from 6 million in revenue to 54 million in revenue. So really proud of that accomplishment. I will tell you that there are different types of inside sales. So if you're looking at what that is, there's all kinds of different ways to look at it. So I decided this year that I would step away and start my own consulting business and really focus on some of the lessons I learned in the past, I would say 10, 15 years.
And what is your consulting business focused on?
So what I focus on is, if you have a record that is a 45, and I don't know if many people remember 45s, but they're the smaller records that one song used to come out on. And it was side A, the popular song. Right? When you flipped it over, side B was just kind of the things that you don't talk about and the things that you don't hear. So I decided we're going to talk about leaving a legacy. And I help leaders and individuals and sales leaders all find out and uncover and explore the type of legacy they want to leave with the people that they serve. So there are many different types of legacies. And they probably have all the aspects of them. But when you focus in on just one, it really drives the point home.
It's very unusual, right? Like often when I hear of sales leaders who've been in the industry, for as long as you've been, the natural fit for the consulting business is for them to go and do sales consulting, right? Or some form of it. So why did you choose this, right? Like, while I can understand the importance of people thinking about legacy, but I'm sure there is a personal story somewhere there.
Oh, there is. And, the other side of my business is I do help people with inside sales. So, I help strategize, build out and help start a team on the inside sales. But legacy for me has really been a fascinating discovery. And one is because as you grow in the corporate ladder, you're learning your lessons. You're learning the side A, the popular stuff. What are the skills that you need? What are the traits that you possess? And building that to achieve results. There comes a point in your career that you have to start succession planning, and you have to start thinking about maybe career 2.0 or doing something different. So I really want people to think about the legacy that they're going to leave from the very beginning and not wait till the end. So for example, someone's skills that they might have learned is they're a forward thinker or they're a strategic thinker. Most people would call them a visionary. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, side B, as you turn it over, is they show up curious. And a forward thinker, visionary, always shows up with the people that they serve as curious. They want to know what's happening from the ceiling to the floor of the business and how they can continue to move that forward. So that's just one example.
That's really interesting. And I'm sure as you dig deeper, right, like the one that you mentioned definitely was a positive side, right, which was a visionary on the inside in some sense, being a curious person, right? I'm sure you also encounter maybe not so nice things. So what type of insecurities do you encounter among leaders? And do you also see patterns for these insecurities across different types of leaders, right? Maybe a sales leader versus a marketing leader or, some other functional role.
So I'm just really rolling this out and the people that I have interviewed, there is a definite pattern and it goes along with their sales type. One of the other ones is trustworthy. And trustworthy is really a results-driven personality. And that results-driven personality is about setting and talking about quotas and goal achievement. So that would be for sales, really, because your salespeople need to trust that you're going to give them a great quota that is not more than a stretch quota, and they need to believe in it. So you need to have a legacy of that trustworthiness. But some of the things that I have seen is that leaders are lonely. Leaders are lonely at the top. Some leaders don't feel that they can go walk the floor like they used to and talk to the people because a lot of people get nervous around them. So it's very challenging for leaders these days to, one, they need to be careful of everything that they say. They need to reinvent themselves consistently with the new generations coming in as they are growing the corporate ladder. And that can almost be very lonely. That's why they read a lot of books and listen to a lot of music.
And hopefully also listen to some podcasts.
Right.
I'm curious. So, it's not been that long ago when you were a sales leader and you were, from what I understand, you were at that organization and in that role for a significant period of time before you moved on. And I'm sure you thought deeply about your own legacy, right? And that's probably where some of this came from.
Yeah.
And so curious, like when did you start thinking about your legacy and were you conscious about the legacy that you wanted to leave behind? Did you work towards it? And what was the outcome in the end?
The beautiful part of it is, and it's a story that I think a lot of leaders go through, but when you first become a leader, you don't think about your legacy. You think about pleasing the people in front of you, above you. You want to do the best. So you push your people hard and you become disciplined and, you drive them and I became that way. And I lost a whole team of people they were fantastic, but I didn't treat them with the respect that they deserve. And I'm just being very honest here. And that's why this is so passionate to me, because that's when I decided I needed to go on a self-discovery masterclass of myself and understand what is it that I need to do? And kind of like your title here, you need to flip the org chart. Dwayne Cummings, a fabulous speaker, said that, and it just turned my world upside down. And I started serving the people that I worked for, because they worked for the client. And that is the legacy that I chose to leave, is one of being gracious and being thankful for the people that were there. So if you were to ask me what legacy I left with, it would be graciousness and it's self-awareness and adapt. So we all have a point in leadership where we really need to take a look in the mirror. And if we're not looking in the mirror, then we're missing an opportunity to really show greatness in the people that are coming up, that will eventually take your position. And that's what people need to remember is you can be a sales leader for 10 years, 20 years, but somebody eventually is going to take your position.
Yeah. And, I think that's one thing that I find really interesting about the presidency in the US, which is that it's time bound, right? And I think that really changes the script in the president's head. And it's kind of well known now that a lot of times the second term is spent on creating that legacy, right? More than because you've accomplished the pinnacle of whatever you wanted to accomplish, right? And I think that sometimes leaders go through that in their own domains, right? Not everybody can be the president of the United States, but you kind of decided that this was the career path you wanted to follow. You worked on it for 20 years or so, and then you kind of think about, okay, here I am. Maybe I want to retire in, X number of years or go into, something different. Now, what do I want to leave with? But I'm curious, you went through this journey of saying that I, of course, want to get results for the organization. And therefore, I'm working for, a lot of times people manage their manager, right? To saying that, no, I actually need to be eventually working for the customer, and I need to therefore enable the people who are the bridge to the customer. Sometimes for a salesperson who's in maybe the situation that people can be in very often, which is maybe with an insecure leader or with a leader who's kind of struggling to kind of establish their own place, right? Or even if in whichever situation, right, it's not always transparent to them what is in the leader's mind, right? What are their insecurities? Right. And so I'll be curious to hear if you can help decode that, because as the title of the podcast goes, right, on the flip side, what we want to help do here is help people understand a different perspective that they're not necessarily always privy to.
That's 100% correct. I can tell you that, and just because I chose to work for the people that I serve doesn't mean that I'm nice all the time. It doesn't mean that I'm available all the time. What it means is I have a balance of discipline and kindness, a balance of accountability and graciousness. It's about being balanced. But what isn't known is all the time that numbers are low or something is done, the leaders are getting their share of conversations too. They have meetings with their managers, and they don't want to share that with everybody. They kind of, as I always said, I'll take the arrows while you take the platform, while you take the rewards, And I think that if sales reps and individual contributors could remember that they're taking more than, they're doing more than just sitting behind a desk and helping you. They're working out the numbers, they're refiguring quotas maybe and budgets, and they're trying to help understand, where do we need to grow? What are some campaigns with marketing we can do? What are some of the things? Where do we see strategically that a new market might be? So we're in there working at a strategic level. And then we also want to coach each individual person. And you may not know as a salesperson that another person is on a PIP or another person is struggling, because that's not something we share. And we treat everyone exactly the same.
Yeah, that's true. And I think oftentimes, I think sales reps, if the manager is really great, the sales reps might not even know what the manager actually did for them behind the scene. And
right.
So it's important to maybe work with that assumption sometimes. It also helps you be kinder perhaps to your sales manager and to the people around you.
Yeah, we tend to stack rank. We'll stack rank behind the scenes too, of who our A players are, B players, C players, D players, and so that's not always based on results. It's also based on fit and cultural fit. So it's interesting.
Some of what you said, I don't know if you watched this TV show called Mad Men. No? Yeah. So,
should I?
Maybe then the comparison is lost, but it's actually about the advertising world through the 60s and so on. And, there's of course a lot of intricacy that still holds with respect to, what a good manager wants to do and what they might project or appear to the person, because they might push someone really hard because they think that person has potential, but maybe the person, kind of doesn't yet recognize it. They're maybe holding themselves back. And it might come across as something that's, why is that person pushing me so hard? Like, are they taking it out on me? They're being okay to everybody else around me. But that might just be because they stack rank you different, right? And, that's definitely true. And I've encountered that in my own career and been grateful for it later on, maybe not during that moment.
Not during that moment, but, the way my husband always told me, if the coach isn't yelling at you, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's probably another very interesting part of this, right? Which is when it comes to sales leadership, right?
Yeah.
Coaching is an important aspect that somewhat gets overlooked, sometimes gets deprioritized. But what's your take on it? And I'm sure that is one of the things that's important in people's head as part of their legacy. But, how do you see that changing from manager to manager and from, the 10 types of legacy that you've seen?
Yeah. So, my position there was I coached managers and I worked for managers who worked for the front line. And for me, coaching was helping them uncover their skills, understanding what's behind the curtain, understanding behind the scenes. And that's where your legacy comes in. That's where you walk with that every day. And then you talk and you discuss what's going on with their teams and what are they doing to coach, because coaching and having those one-to-ones is probably one of the most important things that a leader can do, because that's where you find out if somebody is struggling because of a divorce or not feeling well, or something happened within their family, or they're struggling somehow, and your legacy needs to show up right there. That's where you have your active listening. You want to talk, make sure you're listening. And then you want to make sure that you empathize right there and then, build that out. But then you've got to come up with a plan of action. What can we do? How are we doing? But how can we get you to where you need to go? Because you still have a number to meet in sales.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask you that, right? Which is, you have some leeway, right? And you can empathize. And of course, sometimes people need time if they're going through a rough patch. But sometimes it becomes really challenging because you don't want to get into a situation where you're like, you know what, I think in my head, I can give this person, 1 lean month, maybe 2, and, that's it. You don't want to, be aggressive and you're trying to empathize with the person, and you don't want to be telling them that, listen, I know this is a tough time, but you need to pull up your socks in 2 months, right? So, how do you kind of strike that balance? Because if at the end of the day, you don't tell them clearly, right, how much time they have, or, what is your reserve of patience or, leeway, then you might actually be setting them up for a bigger failure or disaster.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's what you don't want. Yeah. You do not want to set up anyone for failure, and that includes yourself or your managers. You really need to be clear in your conversations, and clarity is probably the best advice I could give, because if you give leniency one way, people tend to keep want that leniency. Not all people, and I don't want to generalize that at all, but there are some. So when a person is down for 1 month or 1 quarter is what I usually give people, 1 quarter to get their number where they needed to be. And if we couldn't get that quarterly number, then we needed to have a conversation and go on a coaching plan, whether it was getting employee assistance involved, where they could go somewhere, or if it was driving the number by what we needed to do. Are you making all your key performance indicators, your KPIs? Are you doing all the things that you need to be doing? And how are you doing them? Are you doing them with heart? Or are you just checking the box, right? So those difficult conversations need to be had and held accountable. Like I said before, you can have accountability with kindness, but you have to have a balance of both. I can be accountable and disciplined and all of those things, but that's not what I choose as a leader to do 100%. So, balancing it all and having clarity and a plan of action is the best way to go.
For me, the takeaway is accountability with kindness. And I think that really rings true in a lot of situations. I'm curious, what's the book that you've been working on?
It's side B, what legacy you're going to leave. So I kind of deep dive into some of these stories that I've talked to you about. We will go through every single legacy, which has its own personality, and personality is based on an instrument or a position in a band. So it could be the drummer, it could be a lead guitarist, because my inspiration has always been music. I feel like it motivates you. And it also helped me with dyslexia speak words that I couldn't always get out in a clear fashion. So get ready to look for it. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be all set and ready to go.
Nice. Incidentally, I was co-hosting a webinar last week where, we also used the music theme, and we kickstarted it by asking all the salespeople on the webinar, what position in the band they were going to be. And believe it or not, the top choice wasn't the lead singer. It ended up being the backup dancer.
Was it? See, most people are the drummer, and the drummer is curiosity. So, because they have a seat in the back and they make sure everything can be heard and seen.
That's true. Well, that's an interesting one.
I do like to start a good brainstorming with a piece of music, because it kind of lets your guard down, and it lets everybody's guard down, so that brainstorming can really be effective. And one question to ask, and when you start a meeting, is, what's the last concert you went to?
Nice. That might be hard for people to recall given the pandemic. But yeah, it was great speaking with you, Paula. And I think there's definitely some very interesting nuggets here, and I would be looking forward to the book. Where can people find you if they want to follow some of your notes on legacy and check out the book once it's launched?
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I would say you can look for me either on LinkedIn at Paula White, or I have a business page there, Side B Consulting. My website is paulaswhite.com. Make sure you put that S in there, or you might get a different Paula White. So Paula S like Sam White.com.
Lovely speaking with you, Paula. Thanks for making the time.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed this, and good luck to you, and keep me informed on how you're doing.
Will do.
All right. Thank you.